So guys, here's my updated color grading video. There are mainly 4 elements involved to the final picture. My camera settings, the LUTs I'm using, my color grading process like curves, skin tones and masking certain parts of the image, and finally overlays like grain and frames. To save you some time, I created a chapter for each element so you can skip to the part you're really interested in. Mostly I'm shooting with the Sony a7S III. Lately I've also been using the Sony FX30 and the FX3, all really nice cameras, having all the same video formats. For the best results, I'm shooting in XAVCHS 422 10-bit. I'm using mostly 4K 60 or 4K 120 for my video portraits, but when not using slow motion, I'm using 4K 24p. For maximum dynamic range, I'm shooting in S-Log S-Gamma Cine 3. That's my preferred color profile. I'm always overexposing the S-Log 3 footage from 1 to 2 stops. I really like the look and how much detail there is then in the midtones and shadows. If you don't have a Sony camera, in most other cameras you got also a flat picture profile. Makes it easier for grading, but if you haven't, don't worry. There are also a lot of Rec 7 online LUTs which are made for non-flat picture profiles. In almost all of my projects I'm using my own LUTs, the Marble Film LUTs or the Marble Mood Maker LUTs. Really like the film look they give you. It's inspired from Kodak Gold, Kodak Portra, also Fujifilm analog films. I made them especially for the S-Log 3 S-Gamma Cine 3 profile for Sony cameras. I also have a Rec 709 version which can be fitted to all other cameras. There are 6 different film looks, easy to grade, but you don't have to buy my LUTs. There are so many free LUTs on the market. You can just download some free LUTs and experiment with them. So let's get to the actual grading. First I'm applying the LUTs, then I'm doing the fine-tuning. I got 3 clips here. I want to grade with you, all shot in anamorphic with the a7S III and the Serial 35mm. It's really important for me for grading to have an indicator, as you know, is this little waveform Luma curve, shows you. So let's start with adding the first LUT to the first shot here. In Final Cut it's custom LUT, you just drag it on there, choose your LUT. Let's see, filmic LUT. Let's see which one I want to take. Mild, or also like solid, or maybe radiant. I think I'm gonna go with filmic. I'm always going around 60 to 80%. For darker shots I'm going a little less. Now you see at the Luma curves there's already more contrast. What I'm doing always next is to go here to the color board, then I'm adjusting the shadows here, going down so we don't crush the shadows right before 0 over here. Then I push the highlights. Let's see, I want to go over 100 in most cases. If there are parts of the image where you want to have the skin exposed right and the background is brighter, then I'm going above these 100, but in most cases to have a balanced image and not a blown out image, I don't want to go above 100. What I added to my color grading process is that I'm playing around a lot with midtones lately. I really like how pulling down the midtones can give you some extra contrast, can get some contrast to your model, to the skin, but not blowing out the shadows. So when you're going down with the midtones, you might want to adjust again a little bit your shadows. Looking pretty good. Now we can go to saturation. I think saturation in this case is almost fine. Maybe just add like 15%. Let's go with 10%, I like it that way. Looking good. Now what I'm also doing is using the color wheels tab, and here you can adjust temperature, tint, if my shot is too warm, too cold, or I want to add some different vibe to it. I'm adjusting this. We could go a little cooler maybe with this look. When I'm moving the temperature bar a lot, you also might want to adjust the tint bar for skin tones so the skin tones stay correct. Here at the color wheels you can also change the color of certain parts of the image. For example, put some coldish blue to the highlights, but then to the shadows you can put like a warmer tone, and then you're creating color contrast from warm to blue. And always contrast in an image is mostly, when combined right, pleasing for the eye, especially with like this orange teal combination. Next up, what's really important is the hue saturation curves. This was really game changer when Final Cut added this to the color grading tools. You can pick here really certain parts of the image, like her skin, right click it, hold, and then make the circle bigger of the area you want to change. Then it indicates the color of the area you've chosen, and then you can change the hue to the color you like. And that's really nice to adjust skin tones if you want to also make certain parts of the image more intense, less intense. For example, we can go here to the little turquoise doors, get it indicated, make the area maybe a little smaller so the greens and the darker blues are not affected as much. And then we can pull it up and you can see how intense these turquoise tones are getting. If we don't like the turquoise and we want like more of a darker grayish touch, we can pull them down. In this case, because it's such a dystopian, really harsh architecture, I think it fits when we even desaturate that. Hue versus luma is also really interesting. For me now in the image, her skin is a little bit bright, so we can go and select her skin again and make the area smaller. And then we can go down with the luma so her skin is not so bright and gets like a little bit more contrast. You don't want to overdo that. If you overdo it, you get fragments really easily, especially if you don't have 10-bit footage. I go maybe down like this, zoom out, and now I think her skin looks really, really nice, has a nice contrast. Now we can move to the last color grading part, which is masking, which became really important to me. With masking and vignetting, you can put focus on some parts of the image and also create this bright dark contrast. So we do that by creating a new color board, and then we go to this little add shape mask feature. Here you can choose the fading of the mask, and you can also choose if you want to change the inside or the outside of the mask. This time I'm going with outside to make everything of the outside darker but not the inside. We could go by just going with her so she's even more in focus and make everything a little bit darker in the image. I would not go with the global settings since the right side, the shadows are already really, really dark. We could go down with the highlights so she's even more in focus, and now you see she is really in focus, like almost even lit up from the front. But I think since the right side of the image is already pretty dark, we could make the mask bigger. So the mask is only affecting the left side of the image, like this. Fade it maybe a little bit, maybe like that, and then go down with the highlights. But we can create another mask to add some light to the highlights. Then we got a more complex image, maybe like that, and then fade it the other way, like that. Just go a little bit less on the highlights. Maybe like that. You have to consider when creating a mask, your subject is moving, you have to adjust the mask. In this case, there's not a lot of camera movement and the subject is not moving, so we don't have to adjust the mask. But keep in mind, with a moving shot, you might want to set keyframes and adjust the mask to your subject. In the next shot, her skin tones are really dominant, so you need to consider some other factors. Right exposure of skin is located around 75, not at 100, so keep that in mind when grading a shot, looking at the luma curves, and you have mostly skin in your image. You can see the skin here, these orangey tones in the image. They will be much better visible when adding some contrast and color, so I'm adding a lot here. And here you see her skin is already visible much better, and I will be going to 75 on these indicators. The tip of her nose, that's okay that it's a little bit brighter than 75 because there's light reflecting. And as you see, we can go down with contrast, maybe just around here. Looks really nice. Maybe go up with the highlights just a little bit. We can take a look at the hue saturation curves if we want to adjust her skin. Of course, it looks really orange right now, but she's really tanned. It's right in the golden hour. That's why her skin is really orange. We could go a little bit further to yellowish tones, but I actually really like how the original footage looks like. What we can do is again to set some masks by creating another color board. Get also the hair in, go to mask and outside, and then we can go down with the exposure, going down here with the highlights, maybe making the mask a little smaller, making the fade a little bigger. Let's move to the third shot. Make a lot. 80%. Adjusting the contrast, shadows, and the highlights like that, and also a little bit the mid-tones, maybe saturation. I think it's pretty fine. And maybe this time we could even make her a little brighter, and the rest of the image a little darker. So we go to the inside and boost her midtones maybe a little bit. Go down with the shadows for some more contrast. And then on the outside we can go down with the exposure. And then she's really boosted. And here we can adjust the mask as I showed you. What I'm always using is I'm using some grain to make the footage more grainy, a little bit less sharp. So in this case I want to use my 35mm grain, layer it on top, adjust it to the frame and overlay it. And I'm going with 2 overlays in this case. So guys, that's about my process at color grading. I hope you like it, you could learn something new. Tell me what you want to know next. See you in the next one. Peace.